The female voice struggles to resolve in its effort to reclaim itself and to solve the moral problem in such a way that no one is hurt. Gilligan talks about four women and what their thoughts were when they were asked about morality. She also discusses when the dilemma of choice enters the center of a woman's life. Now, I'll explain how this all connects together. So let's start by looking at how the feminine voice is affected. As the feminine voice struggles to solve a moral problem in such a way that no one is hurt, the care for and sensitivity to the needs of others are those that mark women as the deficient in moral development. The infusion of filling into their judgments keeps women from developing a more independent and abstract ethical conception in which concern for others derives from principles of justice rather than from compassion and care. In the text, as Gilligan begins to discuss what women had responded to the question about morality, she says, the common thread that runs through these statements, the wish of not to hurt others, and the hope that in morality lies a way of solving conflict so that no one will get hurt. It's striking that it is independently introduced by each of these four women as the most specific item in the response to a most general question. What begins to emerge is a sense of vulnerability that impedes these women from taking a stand, what George Eliot regards as the girl's susceptibility to adverse judgment of others, which stems from the lack of power and consequent inability to do something in the world. When women feel excluded from direct participation in society, they seem themselves as subject to a consensus or judgment made and enforced by men on whose protection and support they depend on. Gilligan talks about the story of a divorced middle-aged woman, mother of an adolescent's daughter, resident of a sophisticated university community. The woman told her story and said that as a woman, she never understood that she was her own person. She did not understand that she could make her own decisions. She had always felt as if she belonged to her father, husband, or clergyman. She let it continue because it was less responsibility. The sense of the moral decision is the exercise of choice and the willingness to accept responsibility for that choice. To the extent that women perceive themselves as having no choice, they correspondingly exclude themselves from the responsibility that decision entails. Now I will discuss the development of a woman's moral judgment. Birth control and abortion provide women with the effective means for controlling their fertility. The dilemma of choice enters the center of women's lives during this time. When a woman considers whether to continue or abort a pregnancy, she contemplates a decision that affects both self and others and engages directly to the critical moral issue of hurting. Since the choice is ultimately hers and therefore one for which she is responsible, it raises precisely those questions of judgment that have been most problematic for women. Now, she is asked whether she wishes to interrupt that stream of life which has for centuries immersed her in the passivity of dependence, while at the same time imposing on her the responsibility for care. The construction of abortion dilemma in particular reveals the existence of a distant moral language whose evolution informs the sequence of women's development. This is the language of selfishness and responsibility, which defines the moral problem as one of obligation to exercise care and avoid hurt. The infliction of hurt is considered selfish and immoral in its reflection of unconcern, while the expression of care is seen as the fulfillment of moral responsibility. So let's review what we have discussed. So today we have discussed how the feminine voice struggles to solve a moral problem in such a way that no one is hurt. We also discussed when the dilemma of choice enters the center of a woman's life. The feminine voice goes from being afraid to speak up and make its own decision to attempting to make decisions that will not hurt anyone. The construction of the abortion dilemma in particular reveals the existence of a distant moral language whose evolution informs the sequence of women's development. And with all this, we will now move on to the three levels.